Welcome to Money Talks with Cathy Yang, your intel on the Philippine markets and the economy. The headlines: the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas holds rates steady, citing uncertainty. BSP Governor Eli Remolona joins us live in an exclusive interview. And love and chocolates in a time of inflation. The chocolate queen of Cebu indulges us on how sales are coming along on this happy Hearts Day. The Bangko Sentral surprises the markets to keep interest rates steady amid global uncertainties threatening the outlook for inflation and growth. The BSP had cut rates by 25 basis points in its last 3 meetings. The market was expecting another 25 basis point cut, but the Bangko Sentral opted for prudence. The Monetary Board kept the target reverse repurchase rate at 5.75%. Interest rates on the overnight deposit remain at 5.25%, while those for lending facilities stay at 6.25%. Following the Bangko Sentral's decision, let's take a look at the dollar-peso exchange and see how that's opened. The peso opens this Friday stronger at 57.95 to the dollar. The peso closed stronger yesterday at 58.06. So we're now back at the 57 to the dollar level. And we're also taking a look at the 10-year Treasury yields. Treasury bond yields dropped ahead of the BSP policy decision. We will give you those numbers soon as they are available. We're also waiting for the PSEI with its opening trades. It's just about 2 minutes into trading. Just to recap, the stock market climbed by over 1% on Thursday, just minutes before the Bangko Sentral made the decision. Well, joining me now for an exclusive interview via Zoom, live from the Bangko Sentral, is Governor Eli Remolona. A happy Hearts Day to you, Governor. Good to see you again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Happy Valentine's, Cathy.
Yes, you bet. You know, you broke a lot of hearts today, or that was yesterday, because you made an announcement that was quite unexpected. Nearly everybody expected the Monetary Board to take a rate cut by about 25 basis points.
Yes. Normally, Cathy, we don't like to surprise the markets. But there was a new factor at play, so we had to pause.
And you had to pause because of uncertainties. I mean, was it an easy call to have decided to stay on hold?
It wasn't easy. It was a complicated decision, but as you know, we normally like to take baby steps in the same direction. But we found that we decided that it was better to pause now and then ease later than ease now and then have to reverse ourselves later. I think that would be less disruptive to the markets.
But you know, you came out with a decision at just before 4 p.m. I mean, if it was really contentious, it would have happened maybe after. But you decided in the 3 o'clock hour.
Well, we started to meet at 9 in the morning. And we had decided by maybe 11 in the morning. And then we released the statement at 3 in the afternoon.
Were there dissenters, Governor?
It was a complicated discussion.
Well, I'm sure it was. I mean, well, were there dissenters? I mean, what was the mood like in the conversations you've had with the Monetary Board?
You know, it's always collegial on the Monetary Board, but there were many points of view, and we had to reconcile the different points of view. In the end, we decided to be cautious. So we decided to pause and await further assessments of what's going on. As you know, the economy has many moving parts, and we use models to analyze the economy. The models that we now have don't quite capture this new uncertainty that we're facing. It's kind of a new phenomenon for us. So we're recalibrating our models, as I'm sure other central banks are, and then we will look at the analysis again and decide the next time what to do.
Talk to us about that recalibration. You mentioned new moving parts there. What were the determining
Yes.
factor or factors that got the Monetary Board to decide to take a pause?
The biggest factor, Kathy, is what we would call global policy uncertainty. We can measure that, and that has spiked in the last few weeks. So we're trying to put that into our models, and it's not easy because it's a big model, and we actually look at more than one model. We look at 3 models, and so we're trying to figure out how to do it. I'm sure other central banks are doing the same thing, and we're going to be comparing notes with other central banks. But we should have a better understanding of what's going on by the time of the next policy meeting.
Talk to us about those 3 models that you're now having to grapple with and the kind of collaboration that you intend to make with the other central banks, presumably Asian central banks, to get a bit of a grip on these global uncertainties that you mentioned.
Yeah, so we have a core model that takes account of the more basic moving parts. They're analyzed together, and then we have extra models that look at things separately. This is also what other central banks do, and then we reconcile what the core model says with what the other models say. That's almost an art, but the models themselves are kind of engineering, an engineering kind of work. But they're reconciling the different models requires judgment, and that's why we have a monetary board. We have a monetary board that has good judgment about the economy.
And between art and science, if you will, I mean, just coming into the central bank meeting, there were a lot of points that we've had to consider as journalists. I mean, Fed Chair Jay Powell, he had a testimony on Tuesday that had him saying that the Fed is in no rush to cut rates. And then came the hotter U.S. CPI print. Now, that complicated further the Fed's timing of its next rate cut. And then post-decision, we've had Trump's round of reciprocal tariffs. That just came about a couple of hours ago after saying that he'd like to see the Fed cut rates further, saying that lower rates would go well with his tariffs. So how much do you think is the Trump pronouncement or pronouncements? How are they going to figure into how the Monetary Board will decide in the next couple of months before the next policy meeting?
I would say, Kathy, the policy announcements themselves, the tariff announcement themselves, are not so complicated. We just stick them into our models and see what the models say. What's harder is the environment of uncertainty surrounding those decisions. That itself is a factor, and that's the factor that's hard to model. And so we decided we would be more comfortable figuring out how that plays into the movements of the economy before we actually make a decision.
What about when it comes to reciprocal tariffs, Governor? Because Nomura came out with a global report saying they are a big concern, especially for the Asian economies, including the Philippines. We've got data from Nomura saying that all Philippine exports may be subject to these higher tariffs. So exports making up about at least 2.5% of the Philippine GDP. So how are you factoring that in with the kind of models that you're working with, the Monetary Board?
Looking at the most recent announcements, we think the effect on the Philippines will be fairly modest. First, our exports to the United States are relatively small. They're like 16% of all our exports, even though the U.S. is still our major export partner. And then our trade with the U.S., a good chunk of it is not goods, but services. So we feel that the effects on us, the direct effects on us, will be modest. What we worry about is the indirect effect, the spillover effects from the global economy.
So what then would that mean to your own inflation projections for the rest of the year and how you decide moving forward into the April Monetary Board meeting?
I think that factor by itself, as it is for most of the world, will mean a bit more inflation. But other factors that are going on in the Philippines suggest little change in our inflation forecast. And this is not taking account of the factor of uncertainty, the more fundamental factor of uncertainty.
So you're still sticking with the headline inflation average of 3.3% this year? And the 2 to 4%
Yes.
target still remains for the annual?
Yes, yes. And inflationary expectations are still within the target range.
So what happens now, Governor, to the triple R cut? I mean, people were expecting this. Will this come just before the April meeting? What can we indicate for the reserve
It's
requirement
possible,
ratios?
Cathy. Yes, that's possible. It's something we want to do, and it's not part of our monetary policy stance. It's just something we want to do for the sake of efficiency in the financial system. So it's a more structural factor. It's not a cyclical factor.
All right. So you mentioned late last year the peso could hit to 60 to the dollar. Is this now a bigger possibility after all that's happened?
It is a possibility. It is a possibility. We don't worry too much about the number itself, Kathy. We worry about large swings in the exchange rate because it's when we have large swings that we get this inflationary effect of the exchange rate. As you know, some of our imports are invoiced in dollars. So because of that, if the swings are large enough, then we can get inflationary effects. And then we'd like to dampen those swings somehow.
So what is your view now on the current dollar peso moves?
I think for now they're driven largely by the strength of the dollar. That has been the case since the beginning of the year. If we adjust for dollar strength, the peso would have appreciated by about 0.34%. And this is the story. This is last year that was most of the story. It was mostly dollar strength rather than peso weakness.
All right, Governor, we have about 2 minutes left. I've had more of those polymer banknotes here versus paper notes in my traditional wallet at the start of this year. Thankfully, I had one to show the audience here. And in more denominations, it started with the thousands and then 50s, hundreds.
Yes, yes.
I wanted to know what data we have on the recorded counterfeits so far since these polymers were made available last December.
Yes, yes. I don't have the exact numbers, Kathy, but counterfeiting has dramatically declined since we issued these polymer banknotes. They're very hard to counterfeit, and they're pretty, aren't they?
They are. In fact, it doesn't get folded even as I want. They get bent, but for sure this is going to be spent after this interview.
Okay.
It will not go very far. Just one last question on the FATF, the Financial Action Task
Yes.
Force. I know that you mentioned we've got a 50% chance that we'll be let off the dirty list because of the counterfeiting. How much of a chance would be that we might be off the list by next week?
I would say better than 50, better than 50%. We've done all that they asked us to do. In fact, we've done more than what they've asked us to do. So I think there's a good chance that we will be off the list by the evening of February 21st.
Wow, that's something I'm going to look forward to, and that's going to be the big news for this 22nd then. Well, thank you so much for indulging us your time, Governor Eli Remolona,
Good to see you,
live
Cathy.
from the Bangko Sentral in Manila. Have a great weekend, sir. Let's take a recap of the markets following the BSP decision. Let's see whether the PSEI has held up. Let's take a look at the numbers. As expected, it's lower today. by about 0.02% in just the first 45 minutes of trading at 6,111.99 just to be exact. The stock market climbed by over 1% yesterday, Thursday, just minutes before the Bangko Sentral announced to keep rates steady. Some bargain hunting going there. Philippine peso opens Friday stronger than the dollar. We're off the 58 mark. We're now down to 57.95. The peso closed stronger yesterday at 58.06. While the Treasury bond yields have dropped ahead of the BSP's policy decision. We're still waiting for the numbers today. We'll give you the latest once those figures do come in. Now let's head on to our two market analysts who have just listened in to Governor Ellie's responses. We have invited back Manny Ocampo, Senior Managing Director of the Investment and Capital Corporation of the Philippines, and roped in Jonathan Ravelas, who expected a 25 basis point rate cut. He is the Managing Director, E-Management for Business and Marketing Services, and Senior Advisor for Reyes Takandong and Company. So good to see you, gentlemen. A very happy Hearts Day.
Morning, Cathy.
All right. I wanted to take you, Manny, first. You immediately came to mind when the news broke. You said last Wednesday that you were taking a contrarian view and that you were right. And what stood out for you and what the Governor Eli just shared moments ago?
Well, I was going on, really inflation had not come down from the December print, and then January print came off. And, that was, I thought that the BSP would maybe take a more cautious stance on that one and see how inflation came off the 2.9 level. I was surprised, maybe I'll say that much, that the governor raised concerns on, global economic policies. So that's, I guess, in short, that's really what the President Trump will do next, kind of concern or kind of uncertainty. So, him raising that, it's a new thing. First, I've heard of it from the official side. So,
Jonas, you took the street's view of a 25 bips rate cut. What do you make of the market reaction so far? Peso strengthens and the PSEI falls.
Okay, eventually the 25 basis point cut was actually brought about by the big concern on the fourth quarter. As you know, it's the biggest quarter where we get to see a lot of consumption, and we saw a real big drop. So the economy needs a nudge. And in December 19, I was actually looking at 50, but they gave the 25. So I worry that given the concerns of Manny highlighted on inflation, if we're not able to, add a little bit of less pressure on cost of doing business, then definitely it's going to, growth will eventually slow down. So that will be a challenge. Although I understand the statements of the governor given on global policy uncertainty, and I think even the movements of the pace of the stock market today, when in doubt, pull out. No, I think the key idea is really to still stay away for now till probably we get to see clearer sign of what's expected from Trump. Although we already know what happened in Trump 1.0, from a high of 9,000 in 2018, we saw the stock market falling further, and we went to a pandemic low of 4,000. So until such time we get to see more signs that the Philippine economy is stable enough, then that's the time we'll probably see the stock market probably hitting a floor. The peso, on the other hand, I think is just going to be range bound between 57.75 to probably at the highs of 58.50, given as the governor highlighted, he wants a range bound, so to speak, taking cue from what he said. We don't want, he doesn't want large swings. So I think the range bound is actually good for the economy for now.
I found it really interesting when the governor said they were using 3 models and they were going to collaborate with central banks on how they're interpreting, the models are interpreting what Trump is doing next. So para bang ang pampuksa kay Trump ay mga models. Now I wanted to know from your end, the balance between art and science. How do you think the central bank will recalibrate all this? Now that it was a surprise, they didn't make a move. What could be a surprise when they meet in April? Manny.
I'll say that numbers will have to show up first. If inflation, I guess I'll say that if inflation comes off 50 basis points from April, between April and March, going into the April meeting, they probably should have more leeway for a rate cut at that time. By that time, maybe Trump's policies would be clearer. It's the uncertainty you're taking out. So if there's direction out there, then maybe people settle down and people figure out from there. You take out the uncertainty. I think that's maybe that's the art in those, but that the models can't figure out at this point, Cathy.
That's true. Jonas, what are you betting on for April?
Oh, well, okay. Basically, I think as we move towards the second quarter, I think there will be a lot of difficulty to probably for the BSP to cut. And that's the reason why they started the balloon on the reserve requirement. So most likely it could be, although it is not part of monetary policy, it is just meant to be able to lessen the cost of business. Cutting reserve requirements will at least lessen the friction cost, and it will allow more lending to prosper because
Okay.
there's liquidity.
Got
But
that.
again,
Yeah.
with that, I think the risk really is on the inflation pressure moving forward.
All right, I'm taking notes of everything you're saying. Thank you so much to you both, gentlemen, for taking the time to listen in to Governor Eli's comments and watch the markets together. Have a great weekend, you both.
Thank you, Kathy. Jonas, thank you.
When we come back, let us unwrap the secret to love as back to Money Talks. Here are the stories making headlines around the world. Trump orders his economics team to devise plans for reciprocal tariffs on every country taxing U.S. imports. The U.S. president has signed a memorandum directing his team to start calculating duties to match those other countries charge. No new tariffs have been imposed, but the order ramps up prospects for a global trade war. For now, Wall Street breathes a sigh of relief, with U.S. stocks adding to the day's gains. Meanwhile, Trump says U.S. and Russian officials will meet on Friday in Munich, Germany. Though also invited, Ukraine is not expecting talks with Russia. An advisor to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky believes the U.S., Europe, and Ukraine should agree to a common position on how to end the war. Political and military leaders gather in Germany for the Munich Security Conference. And a wave of resignation roils the U.S. Justice Department. 6 senior career officials, including Manhattan's top federal prosecutor, resigned rather than comply with an order to dismiss corruption charges against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Adams is accused of accepting bribes from Turkish officials. The NYC mayor, a Democrat, has recently forged ties with Trump, a Republican. Flowers to chocolates, we're bringing them all to you on Money Talks and Happy Hearts Day. Let's check in on what's going on in Cebu with the Philippines chocolate queen, Raquel Choa, the founder of the Chocolate Chamber. Well, thank you so much, Raquel, for making the time. I'm sure you're super busy.
Thank you so much for this opportunity, Cathy. Magtsokolate muna tayo.
Oo nga eh, ang sarap-sarap. Sana makapagpadala ka rito. Nasa Maynila kami. But yes, happy Valentine's, ma'am. How are sales coming along so far there in Cebu?
So far, everyone loves chocolate, no? Stable pa naman, though 10% nag-increase naman kahit papano, despite of all, no? But then, yeah, so far yung market natin hindi naman nagbabago pa rin. And then again, as I mentioned, that everyone loves chocolate. As well as wellness tayo nakaposition yung chocolate natin, and everyone loves dark chocolate. And yeah, a niche market din tayo, especially that we are focusing on artisanal. And 30% of our buyers here in Cebu usually Japanese din. So nag-i-increase din siya because of the Japanese buyers natin. Usually, there's a tradition kasi in Japan na the women usually ang nagbumibili ng chocolate given to the men. But then by March 14, babalikan naman yan ng mga Japanese men na magbibigay ng chocolate sa mga babae.
Alam mo, familiar ako dyan, yung March 14, because I worked in Japan for 4 years at hindi ako nasanay, ano. Pero tinignan ko rin yung presyo sa markado ng cocoa prices. They've actually are at a record. So I'm wondering now how that's impacting your raw material prices at yung pinasa mo ba yung presyo para doon sa mga bumibili ng tsokolate?
That's nice question. So far naman, again, maganda on the side ng farmers natin kasi nag-shoot up talaga siya since November, tuloy-tuloy na yan ng around 60 to 80%, Cathy, yung price ng cacao. But then, again, ang ginawa ko lang kasi especially that we are artisanal, so we're very conservative. May nagbago lang sa atin ng production natin as compared to last year, 2 years ago, na ang ginawa natin, medyo nag-focus lang tayo na hindi madagdagan ng maraming ingredient. Kaya tablia pa rin yung ginawa ng daughter ko a while ago. So we try to possession pa rin yung, focus pa rin tayo on the niche market and then artisanal. Okay. So medyo hindi naman, stable pa naman. So far, 10% lang yung increase ko ng like for example my cake. So yung cake natin ito yung cake na ginawa ko ng daughter ko. So yesterday,
napakasarap po.
may magpapagawa ng cake na kunyari diabetic yung mom, yung ano.
I'm really happy to see, Raquel, that you've really expanded. I've come to know you as a chocolate queen na may tablea, no? But thank you so much for joining us, and hopefully mas maganda pa po ang negosyo kahit na may pagtaas sa presyo ng cocoa prices. Thank you so much. And a happy Hearts Day to you and your team there. And that is it for Money Talks with Cathy Yang. Catch us again tomorrow, 9:30 a.m.